Hello, this is the Unit 9 Formative 2 Review Worked Out Answer Key. So if you have any problems, this would be a great place to come and listen to what I have to say about each problem. So for number 1 here, we've got a fraction underneath the square root. So I need to simplify underneath that square root first. So I can divide both of these by 5. And when I do that, I end up with the square root of 1 over 4. And both of those are actually perfect squares, so if we take the square root of 1 and the square root of 4, we end up with 1 over 2 for your final answer. Okay, looking at number 2. Number 2 here, look and see, can I simplify anything underneath the square root first? Only underneath the square root. Yes, I can. I can simplify 6 over 3. I can divide both of those by not 2, but 3. And when I do that, I end up with 4 square root of 2 over 5 square root of 1. Well, 5 square root of 1 is just 5, right? So I end up with 4 square root of 2 over 5 times 1, which is just 5. So 4 square root of 2 over 5 is your final answer for that one. Now don't forget, if you have something like the square root of 5 over the square root of 3, we need to rationalize the denominator, which means you have to multiply the top and the bottom by the square root that's in the denominator. So I'd multiply the top by the square root of 3, the denominator by the square root of 3, to give me the square root of 15 over 3. And then you can't simplify that any further because 15 is underneath the square root and 3 is not. All right, moving on to number 3. Number 3 moves us into the distributive properties, so I'm taking this entire number on the outside, so this is square root of 6, and I'm going to multiply that with both terms on the inside. So I'm taking square root of 6 times 3 square root of 2. And when I do that, I multiply the numbers outside together, and I multiply the numbers inside the square root together. So I get 3 square root of 12. Then I take the square root of 8, and I square root of 6, and I multiply it by 8. Again, same thing, I get 8 square root of 6. Now after you've distributed, you do still need to simplify. Check your square roots and see, can I simplify either one of them? Well, in this case we can simplify the square root of 12. If I simplify the square root of 12, the biggest perfect square that goes in is 4. So I still have that 3 out in front, and when I simplify this, I get 3 times 2 square root of 3, which is 6 square root of 3. Okay, then I can go ahead and look at 8 square root of 6. I cannot simplify that, so I'm just going to bring that straight down. So I get 6 square root of 3 plus 8 square root of 6 for your final answer. All right, number 4 here, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to distribute this whole thing that's on the outside to both terms on the inside. So when I distribute this, I'm going to have negative 6 times the square root of 3 times 27, which is 81. And then negative 6 square root of 3 times 4 square root of 5. Multiply those numbers outside together, so negative 6 times 4, that's going to give me negative 24. And then the numbers underneath the square roots, 3 times 5 gives me the square root of 15. And now I got to see, can I simplify any of these? Well, square root of 81 should look familiar, so I can simplify that to be this just 9, right? Square root of 81 is 9. And then can I simplify the square root of 15? No, so I'm going to leave that as minus 24 square root of 15. And negative 6 times 9, that gives me negative 54. So this is your final answer. We cannot combine anything else. Okay, now we have a binomial times a binomial, which means that we need to either do the box method or we need to do the FOIL method. A lot of you like the box method, so I'm going to show you the box method. I'm going to take this term here on top, so this 2 square root of 5 plus the square root of 7, and I'm going to write that in the top part of this box here. So 2 square root of 5 plus the square root of 7. Then on the right side, I'm going to write 10 square root of 5 minus the square root of 7. Now all we're going to do is multiply underneath. So I'm going to take first 10 square root of 5 times 2 square root of 5 and get 20 square root of 25, which is actually 20 times 5, which is actually 100 in that one. Okay, then I'm going to take 10 square root of 5 and I'm going to multiply it by the square root of 7 to give me 10 square root of 35. Now I'm going to move down to the negative square root of 7. When I take that and I multiply it by 2 square root of 5, I get negative 2 square root of 35. And lastly, I take negative square root of 7 times the square root of 7 to give me negative square root of 49, which is equal to negative 7. So now I just have to combine all my like terms, and when I do that, I am going to look at my numbers here. So 100 and negative 7, when I add those together, I'm going to get 93. And then I'm going to go ahead and take my square roots that are the same, so negative 2 square root of 35 and 10 square root of 35, and I'm going to add those together, and that's going to give me positive 8 square root of 35. Now before we go ahead and say we're done, we got to check and see, can I simplify anything else further? The square root of 35 at all? No, so this is your final answer.